Qi, or XI, is an alternative spelling of Qi, the Chinese concept of your life force or essence. Xu, XU, is Xu, XU, is an aluminium Vietnamese coin. 100 Xu is 1 dong. R, AA, is a basaltic lava. These words, I know these words because of Scrabble. Scrabble is a game that I play with. We play as a family. I play with my mother and my little sister whenever we get together. It's one of our sort of ways of family bonding. But I have learned, when you know 2-letter words, you can combine words to get a higher score, play them along each other and get a higher score. And this is something I sort of developed and pushed forwards in my family. And for quite a while, I was unbeatable in my family. I mean, in tournament Scrabble, they know all 3-letter words that you can combine with these 2-letter words and 4-letter words. And I'm not at that level. But I've realized, a gamist. I like, these words are not useful in my ordinary daily life, but I have memorized them because they are useful in Scrabble, and I like to see ways to exploit the rules to do well in the game, to get lots of points. I bring a similar attitude to role-playing games. It's not the only aspect I like in role-playing games. I love description, I love character, I love narrative and story development. But one element that I definitely do like is the gamist element. I am a min-maxer as well as being a role player and a describer and a party member. But I do like to make tactical and powerful and useful members of a group who can work very effectively using the rules of the game. Now, I play with a lot of people who they have family, they have children. I have more free time, so I reckon I've spent more time over the last two years studying the rules of D&D, the core rules at any rate, than a lot of the players I play with. There are players and GMs I'm aware of who know them as well or better than me, but I do know them well, and that makes me typically a min-maxer, which means that people who are not min-maxers will find it more difficult to challenge me as a GM, to offer a meaningful challenge to my characters. It's more difficult. Role-playing challenges, puzzle challenges, all those things, knowing the rules doesn't give me any advantage against those. Throw those at me and I'm on an equal sort of setting to anybody else. And role-playing is one of my great loves in the game. So, but I played in games where my character, the character I'm playing, has not been mathematically tested in the games. I still enjoy the games, but it doesn't. They just lose one element, and maybe I also challenge a GM who doesn't have this ability, and they are frustrated by my knowledge of the rules and ability to make a character which is which follows the rules, doesn't cheat, but is statistically more powerful than a beginner player, or maybe isn't statistically, but actually the way I use them has more impact on the game, so the encounter balance is changed. But then again, I meet GMs who also think in this gamist way, this min-max way, and they are able to provide challenges and satisfy this element. It's not my entire reason for gaming, but it's an element in gaming. And as a GM, I also like to think about how to play how to provide challenging encounters. It can be role-playing encounters, or yes, a role-playing or character challenge, and something which will force them into difficult role-playing territory, where not a dice is needed, but but it's not routine. It's out of the routine in role-playing. That is a challenge I like to throw at my players. Another one is ones that will test them mechanically. But I've got to kind of balance it against, some days you're not thinking too bright and you don't respond. I can miss and use bad tactics. Some days I use bad tactics when I should use good tactics, and I can be annihilated. Or the GM might have thrown a threat at me that I should be able to handle, but because because my character, I'm playing a character who wouldn't recognize that challenge, or because I'm not on the ball, I'm playing at 4 in the morning and my brain isn't working, I don't come up with a good strategy to deal with the situation, and I'm wasted. Should player character die if this happens? Well, if it does, it's not the end of the world, because they're not real characters. They don't really die. You can't kill a player character. They just die in world. But you've still got the piece of paper. You've still got the idea. You can bring it into another game. They're not dead. Don't throw a hissy fit if your character dies. But where am I going? But sometimes you do, as a GM, sometimes I throw something at the group which is too hard, but I usually have a fallback plan. What happens if the monsters win? Because there aren't that many monsters out there that can swallow and digest a full group of players that their mission is to assassinate them. Most of them will just leave them for dead, take what they need, maybe sell them into slavery. Other options, use them as gladiators. Dragon might use them as training fodder for its children, its dragon hatchlings and things like that. Train its children with them, or enter them into some sort of dragon gladiatorial combat. There are lots of options. If you TPK your party, it just think of it as a change in direction, not as the end necessarily. But I let them make their death saving throws. My standard technique to keep the campaign going, to avoid a TPK, you need to have at least one survivor. The more the better. When a character is downed, I allow them, before they start making their death saving throws, as they go down, to describe how they go down. And if they do it decently, I'll give them an inspiration point, which they can use on their death saving throws. This gives them they already have a slight mathematical advantage. This gives them a much greater mathematical advantage to survive. If they fail, they will die. That's part of the game. Risk of death is part of my games, but if they survive, then they come around in a few hours as slaves and just robbed, hanging in the meat kitchen of some monster, as gladiators in gladiatorial as spell components, sacrificial victims, whatever. Just a change of direction, and a story to tell in the future. But that's how I balance it. That's how I kind of tend to balance if I've overestimated the power, the challenge of a combat. But saying that, I do like to push my players. If I am pushed to my limits, I enjoy it, or near my limits. I enjoy the combat much more than if I'm just using some of my standard abilities and I'm feeling safe. There are many ways to push them. Push players in D&D, specifically I'll talk about now. One of the standard things to go for is don't go for the hit points. Hit points are the standard thing they protect and are very difficult to wear down. Go for fatigue, wear them down over time. Go for resources. If they've used their spells, don't give them chances for long rests, flood their chamber, so they've got to get up and move and disturb their long rest, or other elements, bring down the ceiling, force them, hear them cutting away at the rock to bring down the ceiling, so the party have to get up and move. They cannot get that long rest. Always keep them moving. That's one element. There are lots. You can wear down their fatigue levels, exhaustion levels. I mean, their resources, their spell, don't let them get their spells back, so they're only existing on cantrips, cantrips and what they have. This also allows a shift in balance. For example, the characters, a sorcerer, for example, with their spell points, if they burn through their spell points, will be the most powerful, sort of, can be a very powerful character, can cause a lot of damage. But once they've used all those spell points, then they're less useful and other characters will come to the fore. Similarly, a barbarian can soak huge amounts of damage until they run out of rage, and then they need 24 hours to get their rage back. Whilst a fighter, though weaker in normal combat, if they just get short rests, they can get their second wind, get their action surge back after a short rest, and they can come to the fore if they're being attacked regularly and can only get short rests. It can allow other characters to shine in a position where they don't usually. So challenge different aspects of your player characters, and don't look down on min-maxing, on knowing the rules. If you don't have time, or even the inclination to learn the rules to this level, no worries. But don't dismiss it as a negative element in gaming. It's just it's just one element that some people have, one interest that some people have in games that can add to some people's enjoyments of a game, and doesn't necessarily detract from any other. I know lots of Nick Dawson, Jarl GM games really challenge mechanically even Andrew Knapp, SR2 Joker. These games can really challenge and push characters to their limits, trying to find different ways of using powers and abilities, thinking on your feet. They're not just standard. They don't just present standard threats. They make you. They force you to think in different situations. And think out of the box. But they're also great describers, role players. Their games drip with atmosphere and character, and there are very deep characterizations in them. Perhaps some of the deepest I've ever encountered in role playing, and that's characterization is probably my main motivation. But I do like min-maxing, power gaming, knowing the rules and applying them. I don't like it when the rules are counterintuitive, and I tend to ignore those rules. But so long as they sort of fairly complement real life, I really enjoy exploiting rules to their limits. My name's Kakaios. I love role-playing games, and I hope to see you in one in the future.